Hi, everyone. This is a video to talk about Chapter 12 about unions and CEO compensation. So, in my city class, I always ask how many people are familiar with unions. In the state of North Carolina, it's usually not a lot of us because we are a right to work state. And I will talk about what that means in more detail in a little bit. But why do we have unions? So, what do they do? So, back in the day, employers did not treat employees well. They worked all the time. Children worked. They got hurt in the workplace, and there was none of the rules that we have today. And so, if one guy named Joe goes and tells his boss, John D. Rockefeller, "Hey, Mr. Rockefeller, these working conditions are terrible. I've been working 18 hours a day every day for the past 300 days, no days off. This is ridiculous." And John D. Rockefeller is going to say, that's too bad. Please get your things and I'll find somebody else who wants to work this, pretty much. So they figured out that if they went as a group, the whole group of employees went to John D. Rockefeller and said, "Hey, John D. Rockefeller, this is not working." He couldn't risk losing all those employees. So this is kind of how the birth of unions happened, right? So there's public sector labor unions for teachers, firefighters, police officers. A lot of states are having problems with debt because a lot of those unions have dictated pensions, which are very expensive for states, or health insurance. The governor of Wisconsin, his name's Scott Walker, he got into a lot of trouble because he tried to eliminate collective bargaining rights for unions. And so what the collective bargaining right did, basically that was their negotiation, right? And so he was, he was trying to cut this budget, right? And so he was trying to find any way he could, and the teachers felt that he was trying to reduce collective bargaining rights. Um, I'm just trying to go over the things that I think need a little bit more detail or more in depth than just definitions. So here's why collective bargaining, the process where a union and management representatives form an agreement or contract for employees. The National Labor Relations Board oversee labor management issues. So there's a certification process, right? If you wanted to actually be unionized, and then a decertification if employees take away a union's right to represent them. Okay, so there certainly is plenty of reasons to join a union. Pro-union attitudes, poor management employee relations if you do not feel that management is listening to employees, poor work conditions if a union has a great reputation. So these are different union security agreements. Sorry, the closed shop agreement said that workers had to be members of a union before being hired for a job, right? So you had to join a union, pay the dues before you could get hired to work for, say, Ford, right? Ford has used unions for a long time. Ford makes cars and trucks and SUVs. A union shop agreement declares workers don't have to be members of a union to be hired, but must join the union within a specific period of time, right? So that might say, okay, hey, Mike, we're going to hire you. You need to join this union within 90 days. And then agency shop, where employers to hire non-union workers who don't have to join the union, but they often have to pay fees. So I mentioned right to work state, right? So North Carolina is a right to work state, and legislation gives workers the right to join or not join a union. Okay, so you can kind of see here the states that are right to work. And if you historically think of unions, you probably think of them in the Northeast or the Midwest, Chicago, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, maybe. So you can see where the difference between the right to work and not right to work. So different tactics that labor unions will use, a strike. So the Hollywood writers, several years ago, I think it was around 2007, they went on strike, and we as consumers had to watch a lot of reality TV. uh, so that's one tactic, right? They just stopped going to work. I know that you might have seen on TV workers crossing a picket line where maybe nurses are striking and a doctor will have to cross the picket line to go to work. Boycott, basically saying, I'm not going to buy any products from that company. So management can also has tactics that they can use, right? If they're not happy with the agreement with the union. The National Football League, the NFL, did this a couple years ago, and they locked out their players, right? Because the players union and the owners of these football teams were in a massive argument, right? Jerry Richardson, who owns the Carolina Panthers, he did not allow Steve Smith, for example, who doesn't any longer play for the Panthers, but he was not allowed into the practice facility. So the number of unions is down, right? Because there's less assembly line workers, less union workers, less blue collar workers. And so if the laborers were to continue in the future, they really would have to include more white collar female foreign workers, right? So white collar, more accountants or analysts or advertising people, right? So it'd be interesting to see if that actually happens in the future. CEO compensation has grown drastically over the last many years. But a lot of companies will say, well, we can't get a good CEO if we don't pay them what is considered to be the market rate. We've seen some CEOs who do a really poor job get what we call a golden parachute, where they go off into the sunset with $40 million in stock options, right? So it'll be interesting to see if this continues in the future as well, because there's been a lot of controversy over this, that somebody does poorly and we pay them a very large sum of money. Pay equity, in general, women earn 81% of what men earn. So that means for every dollar that a male employee earned, a female would get 81 cents. Okay. But that assumes that you're doing the same job, not different jobs, and that's why you're paid differently. Sexual harassment basically gets divided into two categories: quid pro quo, which means one for one, right? I will give you a promotion if. And then the other one is a hostile work environment, which is probably more common in today's environment. In general, you don't know what's a hostile work environment for somebody else. So just try to be appropriate in the workplace. That's what I tell everyone. Okay, businesses providing childcare. I know that SAS is a IT company in Cary, and they offer a subsidized childcare, right? So parents don't have to worry about their kids. They don't have to, if they wanted to have lunch with their children, it's easy to, hey, why don't we go from daycare and go get some pizza or a sandwich or whatever the case may be. In addition, we also have elder care challenges, right? We call people who have children and who are caring for their older parents the sandwich generation, right? That they don't just have to take care of their children, but they also have to take care of their parents as well. Okay, so I think that's it for chapter 12. Hopefully this was helpful, and good luck on your test.